Hey YouTube, it's Matt with Olympus Reptiles, and today we're going to talk about something that you've never heard of before. See how I'm using silence to build drama? Something my English teacher taught me when I was young. A little silence can build drama, because we're going to talk about me killing that stupid fly. We're going to talk about the $1 million snake. Have you heard of that thing? Man, I don't know if you guys have seen this yet. And if you have, you're full of shit because it doesn't exist. So I'll be honest. I already know. Y'all already pissed off because this is some clickbaity stuff. I get it, but bear with me for a minute. Because as we move this market and you keep seeing more and more genes crammed together, we were sitting around having a conversation one day, drinking a few beers, not really, and talking. And Kurt says to me, what's going to be the first $1 million snake? And I said to Kurt, there ain't going to be a $1 million snake. And Kurt says, well, you need to make a video about it anyway, because I want to make a kick-ass thumbnail. So here we are. So let's talk about this $1 million snake and what would it take to get there? So that was the question we kind of started asking ourselves. And to be blunt, I mean, there are snakes that I know of. I mean, the most expensive that can come to mind that I know of, rumors were flying that was offered for sale, was one of the first scaleless at, I want to say like $125K and $75,000 in trade, somewhere around the $200,000 mark. That got declined. So if there was ever going to be $1 million snake, what it would have to be in the ball python realm, which is probably where it would come from right now, because that's the most popular snakes to breed. And the more popular, the more demand, yada, 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 increases price, right? It would have to be a new gene. And now as this hobby has grown, new genes are worth more. Not only that, is it has to be a dynamic new gene. Let me explain. For you those guys that know, we're working something called Hellfire. Hellfire has a chance to be really, really, really cool. Is Hellfire dynamic enough to be $1 million snake? No. Is it dynamic enough to be a $100,000 snake? No. Is it dynamic enough that we're going to ask $15,000 a snake? No. That's just, not all new genes are created equal. Well, that's a really cool one. I can't wait to see if it proves out what it's going to do with some things. It ain't going to push something to $1 million. That's just, we're not going to self-grandiose what we're doing here. So in order for that animal to be pushed up so far to hit that $1 million marker, it would need to be a new gene that turns the ball python world up on its head. Something that gives us a true red. And I'm not talking reddish, muddyish, reddish tint. And I'm not talking, well, if you mix it here and here and here on the back of the clown, you get a little bit of a red look. I'm talking red, like fire truck red. Or it would have to be something that comes out blue. It's going to have to add a color palette that we simply don't have, right? If we could do that, then we're on to something. It would also need to be recessive. Recessive is going to hold value. People are going to pay more for that recessive. So if you have that, let's say we have a gene that would turn the market upside down, the way Scala started to before it kind of flipped back and forth a little bit. And we look at inflation. Thanks, Joe Biden. And I was just a joke. Don't anybody jump down the political rabbit hole. I'm just saying, my gas and my milk and my eggs cost a lot more than they did like 4 years ago, you ass. Of course, that's all politicians that fit that category. We could throw in some inflation to say if that was to happen now and 200 was the asking price back then, that was declined. Let's just say 200 was declined back then, 250 might have got it done. I don't know. You'd have to ask people involved. So let's say with this new Biden economy, it was 300. Let's say 300 is where we would be at with that new recessive blue or red ball python. That is still a far cry from $1 million. So how would we get there? Well, that snake would have to be born as part of an accident of a different project. So in essence, we'd be finding a recessive gene hidden amongst other genes. You say, well, that fucking can't happen. Yes, it can. Krypton! Desert Ghost! Sorry, there's a few that has happened with. So you'd have to find that in another realm, like popping out, right? And in that project where it pops out, you would have to be working something that would be, say, I don't know, a desert ghost, clown, pastel, lesser Pompeii Wookiee Mario or some shit. So you have something else that you're already working on that's crazy, so the base level would already be really high, that's in demand in the market, where the snake that you were going to make before the brand new what the hell is that recessive popped up would already push that snake into the $25,000 to $30,000 range, which is not normal, right? Caleb, find me a $25,000 snake on a morph market that's not overpriced and may actually sell, if there is one. We're going to look at that. And then if you had that gene popping on top of it, where a person could offer enough money to buy this project by buying the one, and it'd have to be just one that hit it. And if I was ever going to spend that, which I wouldn't because my bank account wouldn't allow me, and neither would I ever get a loan for something like that, I would only buy not one snake, but I would want the parents as well, because I would want to make damn sure nobody else is producing at that cost.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to make sure he's at 25,000, not 2,500.
Yeah, I got to be 25,000.
Yeah.
Is there anything there?
I'm looking.
Come on, man. Find me some expensive shit.
Sunset Pied, 25,000.
Okay, Sunset Pied with an extra kicker gene and this new mythical blue gene. We'll call it Azul. I don't know why. Maybe I do. We're speaking a different language. I think that's right. What's that face for?
Bro, I can't. There's snakes that are not worth that price.
There always is. But the Sunset Pied, I can't complain about that one. That's probably, I don't know. I haven't followed that market too much lately.
I mean, a clown genetic strike banana is not a $25,000 snake.
Okay, we're going to stop that before we get in trouble with somebody. I don't know who posted. I don't want to know. We're going to leave that one alone.
I guess, yeah.
Yeah, it is a $25,000 snake if they get that money for it. If you get the money, you get the money, right? But if you have that snake that's there, that's a Sunset Pied, whatever, and then you kick in this brand new gene, maybe you're starting to approach that point where you can put that much money into it. I'm going to tell you something else, okay? This is a God's honest truth, and you're not going to want to necessarily hear this. Not that it matters, because this is all mythical bullshit anyway, so Kirk can make a cool thumbnail, and 3 of you can yell in the comments that this is clickbait. Sorry, you clicked on it. It must have worked, huh? We don't do it very often. You got to let us get away with it every now and then. A run-of-the-mill person, what I mean by run-of-the-mill is somebody who just, like normal breeder, like maybe us, is not ever going to have that snake. Because in order for you to sell that snake, even if all those things are in there, in order for you to get that $1 million for that animal, that project's going to also have some social media push to it. Because there's only a handful of people who could buy that snake, be willing to buy that snake. They're going to want to make some of that money back and breed some interest in what they're doing and all of those things. So if it can be social media pushed, and they're kind of like what we saw with the first Pompeiis, those, I think it was the Pompeiis, the first ones. I believe that when it was made, it was like, I'm not going to sell those. And then all of a sudden we did sell them, and they ended up in Miguel. And there was a lot of videos going with that. And it was really interesting, and a lot of people watched that. They watched Canova with that. They watched Miguel with that because it forced interest in there. So you're going to need that going on too in order to get anything to be at that level of cost. Pompeii was an expensive animal too, but again, there was really nothing new there, just a new combination of ways to do things. To get to this mythical $1 million snake we were talking about, has to be new, has to be paired with a bunch of other stuff, has to be the only one, and it also has to be so dynamic that we would literally believe, not we, but we as a whole, that gene is a complete and total game changer. Not a gene like what we're working with on Hellfire, where I'm like, hey, look, this may be a way to enhance some pattern and enhance some color beyond what pastel does without the browning, because we're seeing adults not brown. So we're seeing like this may be a much better way of doing certain things and push things to a new level, and as we pair it, what it can do, but it's not going to necessarily flip the whole market on its head because we can all of a sudden make a blue snake. That's what it's going to need to be. Something that dynamic. That's my beliefs. And I, for one, think that there will never is a strong word, until we elect Joe Biden for his 67th term at 148 years old or whatever it would be, and we keep having 9% inflation the entire time, there will never be a $1 million snake. Someday $1 million is going to be worth $100. By then we probably all wiped ourselves off the face of the planet. But when that time comes, I'm sure there will be one. But in today's money, there will never be $1 million snake. That's my belief. And if there is, I think a good part of that value is pure publicity stunt. Or a lot of it will be trade. It ain't going to be $1 million cash, I don't believe. Kurt, what do you think?
I think it has to be really cool, glow in the dark, and have gold eggs.
If it lays golden eggs, if that thing can shit golden eggs, it's worth $1 million. They got to be solid. How pissed would you be if it could lay golden eggs and it reabsorbed? It'd be like fucking my life right there. You know what I mean? I'm going to go in and get those things. Not really. Caleb, what do you think? Will we ever see $1 million snake?
In ball pythons now.
In anything?
I think it's possible.
What would be $1 million?
So the price of exotic incredibly, like, when you're on the zoo side of things, right?
Right. Which you've got more experience with than most because you've been
Animals
there.
go for a redonkulous amount of price, just based on how rare they are. Most of them are incredibly endangered, and there's probably only one or two in collections.
Yep.
So I would not put it past there being some exotic snakes that are critically endangered, and there's only one or two of them going for pulling that kind of money. I would not put it past that. But in the private trade, you know, I'd find it hard to believe.
Yeah, I even think in that zoo trade it almost seemed exorbitant. I mean, I remember when certain things came out and they finally at the pet trade, they were you could get them in the private sector for like 40. I'm thinking of spider-tailed vipers right now, and there's no even guarantees on that 40. It's almost like 40 for a shot. And I imagine the first people trying to get one of those are probably could have been in the six-figure range, but I don't think it'd hit $1 million. You know, shit, for $1 million, I'll get on a plane, go over there, and hike myself into the bombing area and try to get one myself and smuggle it home in my pants. Not really, don't do that. You're going to end up on a TV show you don't want to be on called Locked Up Abroad, so avoid that. But you really think there could be?
I do. It may not be snakes. It may be...
Now, animals, I wouldn't deny.
But reptiles, like, you know, I'm not super into the crocodilians right now, just because I don't have space for them, but I do know there are some very, very rare
Crocodilians. Yeah, I think those would go for more. I think like when your Komodos first made it to American zoos.
And I remember seeing Brian Barczyk was doing a podcast, and he was talking about one of his friends in the 90s had the chance to get a spayed Komodo for $10 million.
Wow. But he didn't do it, did he?
He didn't, because if he was going to pay that much, he was not going to get something that was spayed.
And that's just it. I could take any snake I wanted here, and I could slap a price tag on it of $1 million. But it ain't really worth $1 million until it sells. What something is listed at as a price does not mean dick. What it sells for is what the value is. You know, and we've all been there. You know, you have a used car you want to sell, and maybe you got an emotional attachment to it. I got one of those that I don't have for sale, but I probably should because I just let it stick around like yard art. And what my value on it is probably, what I place on it is probably higher than what the market actually would place on it, right? So I could price that at one thing, but it's not really worth that unless I can sell it for that. It's really worth, to me, at the end of the day, and to the buyer, whatever price we agree on. Because if it's too low, and I'm not desperate enough, say no. You know, if it's too high, he's going to say the same thing. So it's, yeah. I mean, but I could see like a Komodo. I could see that. But a snake, I just can't think of any snake that'd bring enough people to a zoo to justify it. You know, I just can't. You know, maybe I'm wrong. If we ever find, here's the other one. If we're saying just snakes, I would say, if anybody ever hikes their ass up the Amazon far enough, and they find that mythical 40-foot, you know, anaconda that is always reported about, but it had never been found, that snake, I think, would. I think a snake that was super large and could become a national story and a record like that, where somebody could see that as investing in it and then making their money back through the display of it in the news and the, you know, all of that. I could see that snake, I guess, hitting $1 million. So probably more likely than the ball python would be, honestly, that. Finding a specimen that breaks any known record by 5 or 6, 7 feet. And I think that is highly unlikely. I personally don't think you're going to catch a 43-foot anaconda. But there are places we haven't been, and God knows what's out there. So I mean, it's possible, I guess. Kurt, anything you want to add? Do you think there's $1 million snake out there? Slight cut due to the battery dying, but I think we're asking Kurt, do you think there'll ever be that? I mean, would it be the giant snake if it is, or would it be the captive bred snake, you think? What one's more likely in your eyes?
The giant snake.
The giant snake. Yours?
Yeah, I mean, more than likely it'd be the giant snake.
Giant snake.
Some...
So, if you can get you a 40-foot anaconda, I think somebody may give you $1 million for that. On a ball python, no. I don't think it's ever going to happen. All right, guys, that is all I got. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you next time.